Good morning, Phil. Well, I don't have video. Let's try that again. Good morning, Phil. How are you? Welcome. Steve, how are you, sir?
Good morning, George. I'm fine.
And Joseph is coming online. I know Ed's going to be joining us. Now, what are all these new? Now we're being offered apps. Yeah, thank you. All right. How are you, Joseph?
Morning, everyone.
Lots going on. Phil, welcome. Guys, let me introduce you to Phil Gafka. Phil is in Chicago. Phil you'll be meeting him in Charleston. Phil is a super experienced guy. Phil, I'm really excited to have you in the community. Phil's going to be participating in the growth specialist certification workshop. So
I hope you say that after we're done. Good morning, gentlemen.
Morning.
Good morning, Phil. Good to meet you.
You as well. So, Steve, in 25 words or less, tell me all about yourself.
I'm old.
And your elbow lets you know
And
every
over
day.
to you, Joseph.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Say that again.
I said, tell me all about yourself in 25 words or less.
All about myself in 25 words or less. A business consultant that helps businesses transform from small private companies into well-operating machines. I don't know.
Nice. Very nice.
A super knowledgeable guy, Joseph. Yeah.
I don't know about that.
Yeah, well.
Don't ask our spouses. They won't agree with us.
No, exactly. But that's the thing. That's why I made the crack about Barry having a golf problem.
Yep.
Yeah, I asked him, we were in a meeting yesterday and I was asked, what's your goal for the year? And he said, and the first thing, he didn't talk about business or his grandkids or anything. I want to make a hole in one.
Oh,
Which would be big. Hey, Ed. Good morning, Larry. Awesome.
morning,
Good morning.
Larry.
I'm in the doctor's office, so I have to be masked up.
That's okay. That's okay. I spend half my life masked up. I'm that guy masked up at the grocery store. So, yeah, man. And Larry's here. All right, cool. Does anybody have so Ed and Larry? I just introduced Phil Gafka in Chicago. Phil is participating in the launch course on the certification workshop. So Phil, Larry, I'm pointing at Hollywood Squares here. Larry helps lead the growth specialist workshop. And
Oh, good. Well, Larry is my connection to you.
that's, I knew that.
Little trivia.
Maybe more coffee and more sleep. Hey, Larry, how are you, man?
Hey,
Morning,
good morning.
Larry.
Hey, Phil.
How are you?
Good.
Good. Welcome.
Nice to see you in a different environment.
Exactly.
Maybe I'll
Exactly.
describe Larry in 25 words or less. Yeah. So guys, does anybody have anything they want to kick around the room? Phil, these tend to be pretty unstructured, free
That's
form.
fine. Those are sometimes the best.
Yes, they are very popular. We always people go and watch these repeatedly. So I will say, I'll share. I don't know if he'll be able to join us this morning, but Greg and I had a conversation. Oh, and Scott Barth, awesome. I'll give Scott a second to log in. Scott also coming to Charleston. Scott has already been through the certification workshop. He'll be in the master classes and the conference. So as will Steve. As will Ed, as I'm hoping will Joseph. And we have a fun event put together. Hey, good morning, Scott. How are you, man? Oh, you're muted.
Again, good morning, George, and good morning, everyone.
Hey, Scott, if I neglected to thank you, I apologize. And thank you for the case study. Super. Thank you so much. So if I neglected, it's not because I don't care. It's because I'm a jerk. I've had a couple of things going on. So yeah, guys, there's a ton going on. We have me blurry, which is appropriate. There we go. I don't know why my camera does that. So one of the things that we've developed, I've borrowed is probably the wrong, plagiarized from NACFA, is a form that we can use to start. So let's say Scott Barth wanted to lead a session, wanted to put on a presentation, webinar, masterclass, whatever. We have a form that I've developed that I'll be putting in Circle that you guys can use, and I'd be happy to show it to you. It's pretty straightforward. This is being recorded, guys, so anything you don't want the public to know, please don't share. Here, I'll share my screen, and I'd love what do we got here? Cancel that. And I need to get the pictures out of the way. All right. So NACFA does a really good job of democratizing knowledge. And that's what we're all about as well. And NACFA is a great partner. We teach their business advisor boot camp, which really focuses hard on value growth. And they put out a form. They use Asana. I'm going to use Google Forms. They put out a form saying, hey, if you'd like to present, let's start capturing your information. And so I have, let's see here, what would it look like if you were a recipient? So I'll just give you a quick walkthrough. You get your name, your contact information, your phone number, your bio. This should be required. I'll go and make it required. You can upload a headshot. And then do you want to put on a presentation or workshop? What's the title? What's the description? And then this is important, learning objectives. This sentence right here has been really super helpful in helping me, first describe courses for the NACBA, for the International Exit Planning Association, and for our own community. And this really, after this session, attendees will be able to blank. What are you going to deliver? What is their takeaway? And it forces us to think. You can talk about what level, from 101 to 401. And this needs fine tuning. How long is the session going to be? They can be an hour, 2 hours, or 3 hours. Would you rather do it live or virtual? And what other information? It's that easy, right? So if Scott, for example, wanted to present the case for which I just thanked him at the summit, hint, he would be able to just grab this form and say, yeah, I'd love to do a session, or I want to, there's information I want to share. If Larry Prince wanted to share on senior leadership development, or Steve Duke on preparing a business for M&A, just fill out this form. And what we'll do near term is, we'll put it through the sniff test here. I'm sure this is really a community of senior pros, so I'm not concerned. I think everything will be presentable. It's just where can we fit it on the calendar, and away we go. So trying to make it super easy, because a lot of you guys, in fact, Phil, I think was part of one of our most recent conversations. You have a lot to share, a lot that you can bring, to the community, and get your expertise out there. Can help you make the phone ring, and more. Cool. So that makes sense. I'm glad to answer any questions. I just thought I'd show that to you guys, and it'll be inside Circle. And this is not available to associate level members, which could be another conversation. This is only available to growth drivers, people who are actively in the community. So any questions about that? Quick share for the morning. Cool.
I have a related question, George.
Sure.
I bet you got a form like that for case studies. Is that correct?
We do have a form like that for case studies.
Where would one find that?
That's an embarrassing question, Steve. Next question. In circle. It's in circle.
Okay, yeah, I
It
figured.
is. I put the case, I put the case form out there, and we've done after preliminary feedback, I gave it a bit of an overhaul, and so I will make sure that it's very clear and easy to find. It may already be. Sarah does a great job, but we'll make sure that it's clear and easy to find. Good question, because one of the things Growth Drive makes a lot of promises to you guys. And one of the things we're asking you guys, driver, take, Scott can comment on this. Larry's busy writing one. They're relatively easy guys once you get your thinking in order, they're relatively easy to prepare. And we're going to start gathering, creating a library. We have started creating several people have delivered them. Anna Hall, by the way, guys, round of applause. Anna Halliburton, not here this morning, our first lifer. She stepped up and purchased a lifetime membership to Growth Drive, which is terrific. So she was our first. She's lifer one, and I'm really excited. She has so much. She brings a ton to the community. So I just wanted to recognize her here publicly. She's a good friend and a heck of a practitioner. In fact, I have her bio here. I'll be posting as well. Okay,
George,
Steve,
I have a question for the community.
Please.
So in some of the work that we do with our clients, and I'm assuming most of us are working in the same space, typically, companies doing, under 50 million a year in revenue, or, certainly under 100 million in revenue. One of the challenges is, we all have a lot of experience. We know intuitively what really needs to be done, but quite frankly, it's a poor choice to always depend just on your intuition, and data usually is better. So to the extent that, data pools or data points, I should say, for companies in the space is really very small. I'm just curious what, the community people are using in order to make reference points. So, obviously everyone knows, like GF data and stuff like that. So some of the transactional kind of data, financials, where you're looking at, EBITDA and margins and then revenues and stuff like that. But there are other softer points, when you're looking at developing, your clients. What does everyone use as a reference point, to, what's the end goal, and what would be considered best in class and so on. Data sources, not just gut feelings.
Are you talking about financial information, Joseph, or some other stuff?
It could be financial information. Certainly any transactional data that you get, in the lower, upper micro or lower middle markets, is hard to rely on, other than just, some of the very basic stuff. For example, gross revenues, EBITDA, debt ratios and stuff like that. Basic financial information you could probably rely on. But outside of that, it's really hard to get much of any information. And it's usually a very small pool. There aren't that many transactions that actually record their data in the space.
It's interesting, Joseph. I don't know if there's one source, but collectively, we probably could all, from our background, contribute from data points that we have read or used. I'll give you an example. There is a data point that small middle market businesses, what % of their revenue should go to marketing and developing and promotion? Now, that's traditionally 5 to 8%. Now, it depends if you're in growth mode or what you want to do, and that's documented. But now with the low cost of social media, you could lower it, you could get away with 1-2%. So one of the things I look at is what % is going into not sales, but marketing promotion type activity. And that is, so I look at revenue and I look at it, so it's an indicator for me, but it's just a viable indicator based on historic data. Is that the type of thing that,
Yes, except that I would drill down even deeper. So for example, a manufacturing company would have one set of numbers and a SaaS company would be completely
Mhm.
different. So what I'm saying is that in this space, all of that data, there are no data points, or very difficult to get data points to
hard.
make reference to.
The-
In the larger, true middle markets, or, in the very large companies, that data is very available and everybody knows exactly what those numbers should be. What their operating margin should be, what the cost of cost of labor and so on and so forth. But in our space, it's very hard to find that data.
Hey,
Yeah,
Joseph, I've been utilizing Profit Sense for about a dozen years now through SageWorks. And that has very specific drill down by NAICS code, by size, by geography. And when I start out with a client initially, I run that Profit Sense report for them for the previous 3 years. And then we're able to take a look at those various aspects of the business in terms of the range, because it also gives you not only specifically within that NAICS code, but then it also gives you a range on the majority of the key financials. And then we're able to have a really good discussion as part of that setup to get them going on where is their company currently, versus what the range would be, or against the industry average, or what their trends have been over the previous 3 years.
And where are they capturing their data from? How do they get their data?
It's primarily through CPAs, bankers, and then some business coaches and consultants.
and Sage obviously has their finger.
Yeah,
on it.
SageWorks. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Got it.
And Profit Sense is embedded in, shoot, somebody was just telling me.
Yeah, sure. Somebody said that same thing to me. It was part of another
Now-
offering.
I'm gonna build on what Scott just said. Profit Sense is an incredible tool. And we used to, years ago, there was a salesperson at Profit Sense, and we would refer business back and forth, one of their senior salespeople. It's very complementary to what Core Value did, and very complementary to Growth Drive. It's a terrific piece of software. One of the other potential sources that we point to in the launch course, we have Ibis World is a great source, Joseph. And industry associations, you'd be amazed when you pick up the phone and call an association. First of all, how thrilled they are to hear from you. That's been uniformly been my experience. And the amount of data that they have on their members that they're willing to share pretty openly. So just food for thoughts.
Yes, so I appreciate it. That actually, Profit Sense sounds great.
A couple other things, Joseph. BizMiner does something similar to what Profit Sense does, but Profit Sense does a much better report. And recently, within the last year, Marie Di Benedetto suggested Life Plan also.
It's Live Plan that has Profit Sense embedded. Thank you, Steve. Trigger that memory. And Maria is presenting the afternoon masterclass on Tuesday, which is financial modeling for business advisors. And my understanding is she's going to use Live Plan as her demo. Here's how to develop information.
yeah, she liked it a lot.
Yeah, and guys, going forward, I think I mentioned this last time. Going forward, we're separating the certification workshop from the conference, from the summit, so that all of us can attend the master classes. And because I've had a couple of comments come back, well, I'll take the certification, but I also want to take the master classes. Don't worry, we'll fix it. So, and we have a soft date for the first week in May to do for our next live conference. I know that normally we don't do one in February. Ed, could I ask you to, I'm just going to mute you, nothing personal. So we're gonna separate the two in May, and in May, I have not negotiated for a venue. You got to run, Joseph? No.
No, not
Saying-
going. We're just saying
okay.
thank you.
I've got a question for Ed, if there's not too noisy where he is, but would RMA be a good thing to throw out there too, Ed?
Ed muted himself.
Our RMA is a decent source. I've also used deal stats as a subset, but it might not have as much detail. Consequently, I looked also at the IBA data, and sometimes that's very, very helpful.
And we should, Dave Fine over at Value Source, which is NACVA's data arm, shorthand NACVA's data arm. Dave Fine's a great guy, and he and I have kicked around making some of their data available to non-value and make it easy to use for non-valuators. So a product that would allow you to do exactly what you just asked, Joseph. I'm going to
Yeah,
shoot it.
I actually use Value Source myself, but
Okay.
there's a lot missing there, like some of the things that we've just talked about, including what Larry brought up. Those metrics are not not part of the traditional M&A captured data.
Joseph, what would be another example of the type of data that's not financial?
Data that's
Revenue,
not financial.
revenue per employee.
Good one.
That's one that we look at a lot or revenue per vehicle. But you don't see that obviously in many data that's out there, but you can get that on industry data.
Yeah, that's included in profit sense too, as well as some customized measures. George, if you'd like, I could just share a sample profit sense real quickly, just to give folks that haven't seen it.
Would
Yeah.
love
Yeah,
that.
that'd
I'm
be
making you
great.
a co-host. There you go. You can share
Okay.
your screen, sir.
Thank you.
This is awesome, guys. Thank you.
Yeah, so the report, excuse me a sec, I'll go to the front of it. So, you can customize your logo and so forth and put in here so it's directly from you. And then, this is a sample of a metal heat treating company, 1 to 10 million. And it's looking at the last 2 years, and it starts out with the summary in these 5 key areas. And obviously green is good, yellow is basically flat, and then red is declining. And then it goes into a summary of each of these areas. So liquidity would be first. And it gives you an artificial intelligence and AI evaluation of the performance, and then includes tips for that particular business on things that they can work on. And then also you can run, by the way, an industry only report, again, by NAICS code. And I use that sometimes in the prospecting aspect to share with a client on where their business should be before we even get involved in working together. Then what it does is, as an example here, it's showing you the current ratio, and the red numbers here, the larger ones, that's the client itself. And then it goes through the industry, and then real time, so this would be 2017, 2018, 2019, the last 3 years. It has a baseline benchmark. And then the real time is this number down here, that's 451 clients that have been active in their system. So you can look at historical data as well. And then it goes through these key receivables, payables, again, with suggestions. Net margin, this is really referring to EBITDA, gross profit margin, their G&A payroll as a percentage of sales and total payroll to sales. And then it goes through, debt leverage ratio, assets, so forth.
And those there are 5 dots. This appears to be a scale in each area. Is that letting them know sort of how they measure that if they're
So George, just as an example, this is their direct labor ratio, divided by sales. So this is what it runs. Here's where the industry tends to be. It's going to be an opportunity for us in terms of the productivity from that. Sometimes it's even looking at, you have to go back and look at their chart of accounts and how they're accounting for business. But I'll just move down. So this is 18 pages, revenue per direct labor hour. And then it gives you their actual numbers. And then shows over those 3 years, the percentages each year within the major categories. And then I love the end of this. This is really helpful for new clients. Then it'll go into each of the measures that are throughout the report. It actually gives you their current number, the industry range from all the data that they have, and then the distance that you are from that industry. In other words, their current ratio obviously is very strong at almost an 11. And the industry tends to run 1.4 to 2.6, so they're well above it. And the nice thing is it starts to teach the clients, you can use this to teach the clients what the actual calculation and then what the results are. Then the other thing is you can download this not only as a PDF, you can also download it as a PowerPoint. So you get all of these charts alone with the explanations there. So I'll walk my clients through because all my clients love, they would rather see a PowerPoint presentation with graphs than looking at all the the narratives. And it just gives you just a great sense of information. So I do this with clients at least once a year. I'm updating where they're at, but typically I'll do it every 6 months and help them understand the improvement that we're making and the opportunities and where the key areas are. So
Garth, this is very helpful. Let me ask you a question. When it gives range of values, is that range of values of the clients on the database?
yes.
And it's and how are they calculating the range of, are they calculating the range of values, or are they pulling that from a data source?
Oh, I'm sorry, Joseph. If you're wondering around a range of value for the company as it would relate to M&A, no.
No. I didn't mean that.
Yeah,
Any of
okay.
the metrics over there said, for example, I think Z-score was from 1.6 to 2.9. It's basically telling you that that's from within the participants or the people who submitted their data.
Yeah, it's that as well as an analysis of that particular industry in order to establish that range. So I'll share the screen again just as an example. So if we're looking at current ratio as an example, the analysts at SageWorks have developed the industry range. And then you have your actual number in here. So it's about all of the participants as well as some additional analysis from the analysts determine what the length of that range is. So as an example, I had for a short time, I worked with a construction company that was doing foundational work, and they had a gross profit margin down at 23%. They were 10 basis points outside of the range. And they were basically a not-for-profit business. And they were doing $20+ million. And then I had to help them understand that the first thing we've got to get after is going to be about what you're charging, how much you're paying your employees. They were very prideful of the retention rate of their employees. And when I found out what the average wage, which was about 50% above market range, I said, why would anybody leave in this industry, and go somewhere else? You're not going to get that kind of payment. We've got some fundamental problems here. So immediately it was able us to dive in and look at the fundamental problems. But the business was 35 years old, and ultimately what they decided to do was just sell. I've just got to get out of this business. We don't have the the passion and energy to do what's necessary to turn this thing around.
But do they give you access to this data, or they just give you the summary? In other words, for example, the range is the range, but they actually give the underlying anonymized data access to it?
I don't think so, Joseph. I think it's just about, once you've generated the report, But there's also some really good stuff on industry reports as well. Let me show you an industry.
And this is all from Profit Sense?
Yeah, this is all profit sense. I'll just pull up the
Yeah, the reason I ask
industry.
is, you kind of want to know, the normalized distribution of these numbers to know where, what's the midpoint and where a client might be considered best in class or something of that nature.
Yeah, this may actually be a little closer to that, Joseph, because another report that you can run, again, all these reports you can run once you input your data. This one goes specifically about industry. And then it'll take a look at those measures that we just talked about, look at the last 12 months. And here's the number of participating companies at the top. You see almost 1,800 in this industry over the last 12 months. So it's pretty robust in terms of the sample of information that they have in here. 36,000 over the last 5 years. And then all years in the database, almost 95,000 companies that would fall. I shouldn't say companies, I should say data points.
Data points. Right.
Yeah, data points over that. Yeah. And then as it goes into this, you can see some specifics because it also gives you a handful of additional measures specific to the industry, such as, backlog and worker comp, subcontractor expenses, sales, those kind of revenue per employee, because that's what prompted me. I think somebody was mentioning that a second ago. And then again, this one here on the industry report, so it doesn't have your client's data, but this is a great thing to be able to share with a client. And immediately it talks about, here's some of the things that we're going to be working on in those 5 major areas. So based on the industry, here's some of the top tips or best practices to help improve in these areas by NAICS code. So there's profits and margins and liquidity and, sales and so forth.
It's
Yeah,
interesting. I just happened to notice one of the data points that can change the admonition to have your customers pay for the work you do for them, not the business.
Yes.
That is in a lot of businesses, incredibly good advice.
Yeah, the tasks themselves are fantastic, and my sense is that the vast majority of us know what to tell the client. We don't tell what the client the tasks are that need to get executed, but having a reference point or a KPI or some type of goal that is appropriate for them to generate that number is, for me in particular, has been very difficult to find good data. So I'm excited to take a look at that. I mean, obviously, I'll take a look to see if they have, if they provide access to the data. If they do, I'll get back to you guys and let you know, because I think normalizing those numbers would be very helpful to tell a client, okay, this is where the numbers range and this is where most companies lie. And, if you want to be best in class, you should probably, target this number. And this, these are the steps that you would have to take to do it.
Hey, George, if you'd like, I'd be happy to post. I've got about 3 or 4 of the sample reports like this. I'd be happy to post that on
That would
Please.
be great. Scott.
in the circle. Then anybody can pull it up, take a look at it.
Absolutely.
Scott, what do
Thank
you
Very helpful.
What do you pay, Scott, for that?
It's approximately 2,000. And then they have training annually, and then they so there's no individual per report. It's unlimited, and then it's they also offer additional training in every one of their classes, and then have access to different reports, even on doing valuations as an additional service. So it's pretty comprehensive.
Very cool.
There's another website that I've used called anythingresearch.com. And they give very broad and quite interesting industry reports on the industry as a whole for almost any industry you want. And I've used that, and clients have liked that information.
Could you say that again, Barry?
It's called anythingresearch.com.
We will.
George, maybe it's worthwhile to compile these and keep them in.
I am writing it down.
Hey, Joseph, to your point on those tips in each of the, those 5 major areas when you're running the industry report, that's also a great thing for prompting questions when you're going to sit down with the client and actually have the discovery. you're able to identify some actual, do you have this in place, or what do you do in this particular area? By the way, industry is running at approximately this. And where do you know where where your business currently is? And they're like, man, I've never looked at that before. I'm not sure how I go about figuring that out. So
Yeah, well,
it certainly makes me much smarter than I am. So, which is good.
Yeah, I think that's not too challenging, because for the most part, most clients don't really have their arms wrapped around their financial data in the first place. So, even getting them to have a discussion, even asking them simple questions about, what's this, or what's your, working capital ratio, or what's your debt to equity ratio, any of these questions, they'll look at you kind of like a deer in headlights, because they really don't know what you're talking about, because they don't know.
Yeah, Joseph,
So-
even as an example on, something that is a basic that everybody ought to be knowing, your gross profit margin, what has it been doing over the last 3 years? I've never really looked at the trends. You run the report, you take a look, you input their data, and you see that it's dropped 5 basis points over the last 3 years. We've got some fundamental things that we're going to have to get after in a hurry.
Yeah, well, the simplest question, the simplest way to address that is with one single question: is how are you doing against, compared to your peers?
Yes.
And they'll just say, about the same, and the response will be, how do you know?
They don't know, Joseph.
What numbers are you using to say that you're about like everybody else?
Yeah,
And they
mine
can't answer it, right?
Mine, Joey, is how do you feel about your business? What's your overall feeling about the business? They'll say, well, it's really good. And then I come back and jokingly say, compared to what? And they're like, huh? I don't know.
It's interesting because this is Scott, I think you used the term educating your client, and that's what this is all about. In the clarity level 2, the only question we ask is essentially, is your financial reporting following industry best practices? And the client, I think that at the first blush, the client's going to say, yeah. But we all sitting here can be highly confident that the typical company doesn't have their chart of accounts set up correctly, let alone everything that the financial and operating reports that would fall out of that. That Profit Sense does a magnificent job of uncovering. And it would be fun if, like Life Plan, we could integrate some of this into Clarity. Anyway, give us time.
No, I think for the
Yeah,
most
I have
part,
a question.
go ahead.
I'm sorry. It's kind of a question on the account is coming out. Okay, so bear with me. When you're working with a client before you even get involved, I think you mentioned you do Profit Sense. How do you handle situations where the client's definition, let's say, of gross profit is different than the industry standard definition?
Yeah, Barry, kind of a multi-part answer to the first thing I'll do once I have a discover meeting scheduled, because I'll spend 2 to 3 hours with a client, no charge, just to kind of talk about their business, find out if we're a good fit. I'll run the industry report always in their NAICS code. I get that information from them. We'll go through that discussion. We'll start to talk about that. Once they've agreed to get started, before I do my base camp day, which is my kind of baseline setting, I do a couple of half-day meetings with the leadership team. Then what I'm doing is I ask them to send me their at a minimum their two previous years of financials. I'll put that into Profit Sense, and then immediately what that does, that allows me, because they've sent me their P&L and balance sheet, that's basically all they have to send you in order to complete this. I'll be able to see exactly what their accounting looks like. And to George's point, it's amazing how often they don't have cost of goods sold following GAAP principles. And, either no costs in there whatsoever. So they're working without any gross profit margin. One of the first things we're going to be talking about is you don't understand the value of your business within the marketplace just because you don't have a gross profit margin. So Barry, many times it's just getting that information before my base camp with them to, start the engagement, that they've actually sent me their financials, and it gives me a pretty good indication. One of the first things we're going to do is get with your accountant and maybe change accountants, but certainly go back and take a look at the chart of accounts on some key things and make sure that we're getting the right the right measures out of this and the KPIs so that we can do something in your business. Does that answer it, Barry?
Well, it sort of does. I mean, I thought I heard you say that you give this, that you get their financials before you even engage with them.
Once I've agreed to do an engagement with them, then I'll get their financials, but I go in there with an
Okay,
industry report. Yeah, I can use the industry report just by getting their NAICS code, from the conversation. And from there, we're starting to be able to take a look at some of those standards, some of the ranges and measures. And when they see that there's a data like that one I just showed you with 95,000 data points in that particular NAICS code, and that's 1 to 10 million. Because there's 0 to a million, 1 to 10, and then 50 plus. And then I think there's a fourth category. I haven't worked with a client that large to use the fourth category, but that allows us then to really have some good conversation, even in that discovery, meeting with them.
Well, and what it also does is if you do have some accounting practices which are inappropriate, by comparing them against industry averages, you'll be able to ask the questions to identify if there are accounting, issues that are going on within the company. But oftentimes owners will take, if you say their gross profit is 30%, well, then that is in their mind forever. And it may not be, it may be 40 or maybe 10.
Yes. Or 100, Barry, like in some cases.
Or 100. I mean, it's, sloppy accounting, I find, is just, throughout my career, I've seen sloppy accounting.
Yeah, Barry, especially if you're in a conversation about, the transition plan for the business they want to sell in 3 years or 5 years. You tell them one of the first things that we're going to have to do is we're going to have to go back into your financials and make sure all of that is normalized and following GAAP principles, so that you can even have an intelligent conversation through the due diligence process.
Well, and it goes to even the saleability of the company.
Yeah.
Yes.
Incredible
It's
financial.
no secret that most companies are managing for net profit for the lifestyle of the owner, as opposed to, building value in the company, which is almost the antithesis of paying the least amount of tax.
Yes. How often, Joe, have we run into that?
For me personally, probably around 2/3 of the time,
Yeah.
at least 2/3. I mean, the more sophisticated, bigger companies, they tend to do a better job because it becomes more decentralized. But the more the owner has control, the more it's really managed for generating the most amount of net after-tax income for the owner.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And yes, and
I'm going to say, George, let's check in with Andy Weevil on Joseph's question, but outside of the financial data, there are other data points. And Andy is really good at knowing, might have some sources when it comes to marketing and sales and other KPIs that are data based. So I was going to email Andy and copy you.
awesome. Thanks, Larry. That's a great idea. And Andy is a fountain of information, a font of information. He's such a great guy. Yeah, I will post. So Larry, thanks for throwing the URLs up. I will post those in Circle.
George, maybe you can make it another spreadsheet, kind of like the one that you had, and we can all kind of input and make a little summary on the side of it in terms of what we use it for.
Happy to.
And I know we end usually in the next 2 minutes. I got on a couple of minutes late. Did you have a chance, Phil, to share a little bit about you? And
No, I was.
Phil, we usually have a mix of, on the Tuesday mornings, about a dozen different people, maybe 15 that rotate through attending. And you can see about half of us are on today. And we're the regulars for the Tuesday morning coffee Klatch. Share a little bit about you. And I want everyone to know I met Phil through somebody else who I have a close relationship with. And both the gentleman who introduced me to Phil and Phil himself, what I call master givers and connectors. And they just, it's always about how can I help somebody else? Can I connect people? And in one meeting, Phil's already connected me to somebody else, and I connected Phil to George. And I think that's a part of the culture of our community as well. And that's what I had a couple times I've shared with Phil. But with that, Phil, share a little bit about yourself.
Thank you, Larry. Appreciate that. I have a 30-year career in the high-end residential appliance distribution business. So we distribute products like Sub-Zero, Viking Range, Thermador, a lot of the high-end toys for the kitchen. I was with one company for 23 years, went from sales up to running the company, left that company, started the Viking distributorship in the Midwest, ran that for 5 years until we had that 11-second meeting where they said, hey, we sold the company, here's your check, see you later. And so I took a look at what I wanted to do next. And this is my 15th year in my own business as an executive coach, leadership development, and do a lot of work with organizations on culture development. Because if you look at the Gallup polls number, they've been doing this since 2000, you have roughly a third of your workforce actively engaged with what you do into their job and into their company. Because I think there's about a large lack of leadership. Visions are blurred, cultures are a bunch of BS that they put up on the wall that nobody believes in and nobody lives. So I work with a lot of clients to help them, what are you trying to do? What do you want people to engage with, and how are you going to do this? And it gets a little exacerbated now. This is the first time in our history we've had 5 generations in the workforce. So trying to align 5 different generations with different value structures, and then you throw in a little bit of LGBTQ, a little Black Lives Matter, a little DE&I, and you either have a recipe for disaster or a recipe for success. Yeah. So again, do a lot of work in that area of getting organizations to figure out how they're going to do their business. Looking at growth drive, this is just I think a natural addition, helping all those baby boomers that are going to be moving up and out. How do they get the money they think they want to get out of their business? And I think, Joseph, you had a great point. A lot of these are lifestyle businesses. And when they get hit with reality that it's not worth what they want it to be worth, I think there's a great opening to use, this forum and the tools here to drive my business forward. So that's kind of in a nutshell.
Thanks, Phil. Phil's also an author. He's combined his passion for golf with leadership and written a book. Was it Hole in One?
Hole in One Leadership. I've got the front 9 done. I'm working on the back 9. And so Barry, you and I will chat a little golf at some time.
That sounds good.
I do have that 1 hole in one, and there's always been a lot of just parallels between the game of golf. I mean, it's kind of like leadership. It starts with you. Golf is nothing more than you, the ball, and the club, and where are you trying to take your game? Well, you can take it into, you have 14 clubs in the bag. You've got your different tools, just as you have skills and abilities as a leader. Do you use them all? Do you know when to use them? And I know I've gone through times where I never touched my driver because I couldn't hit it. So you got something in the bag you're not using. How do you develop that skill and reinforce the good ones? And I do public speaking, not only on leadership and culture, but also a good theme lately has been that other 5G revolution, which is the 5 generations in the workforce. And how do you put all that together in a nice and tidy package that you can get your company to work together and align and accomplish what you're trying to accomplish?
And Barry and Phil, you live near each other as well, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Barry, I am golfing this afternoon.
You are golfing this afternoon.
Well, I've got a friend he belongs at the Metropolitan Club down at the Willis Tower, and they've got a hitting bay on floor 67. So he's getting a group of us together. So we'll hit a few balls this afternoon.
Yeah, I'm going to the Dome this afternoon.
Okay, there you go.
Done. Awesome. Guys, so many of you guys have books. I would love, we need to post to, we have a books area. Jane Johnson just published a fabulous book as well. I've started to read. Well, so far it's fabulous. I haven't finished it, but so many of you guys have books, either out or in production. We should let's let the world know. Okay, guys, we have now run over 45 minutes. You know, this is a half hour to 45. I actually have to get ready for a meeting, so I'm going to bow out. You guys want to stay on, please?
Got to run as well.
Terrific.
Nice to meet you all, gents. See you again.
Yeah,
Likewise.
Phil,
Thank
welcome.
everyone today.
Thank you.
See you in a couple of weeks.
All right.
All right, guys.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Everyone have a
everyone.
great
Have a
day.
great week. See you.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Scott, Joseph, Ed, Steve, Al, Frank, Dan, all the guys up in the booth. Have a great week.
George,
Yes,
George,
Barry.
you have a couple minutes that we can talk.
I do. I do. Hey, Ed, have a great day.
You want to stop the recording?